Hi, everybody. Welcome to class this week. Just here at home in Nelson. Last time we had the last class that we did was sort of a discussion, question, and answer, and it was in Beijing, China. So here I am back on the other side of the world at home to snowy Nelson, at least where we are, and it's starting to warm up, which is nice. It was very, very cold when I got here. Been cold for quite a while, but now we can really feel that spring just right around the corner. So I'm going into retreat for the next little bit, but I'm going to do some recordings of some classes just as we move through Lama Yeshe's book on Tantra. Next live class we'll have will be another discussion Q&A in a couple of weeks or so. So in the meantime, like I said, I'll record a few classes. Hopefully, as I always say this, the mantra that I never honor, which is that I'll try and keep these classes a little short, so not too long, but we'll see. I've got a bit of material to go over today, so hopefully I try not to do it too long and exhaustive. And we can keep going forward in the text. And like I say, in terms of sort of an overall course, we'll be going through Lama Yeshe's book, switching over to Rob Priest's book on psychology Buddhist Tantra, which used to be known, that book, as The Alchemical Buddha, I believe. And I think those are two good introductions. And then we'll go into the introduction to Kriya Tantra using Tsongkhapa's Naram Chenmo and my own notes from my teacher, David Gonzalez, Venerable Samsaric, as well as his book, his short text on the introduction to 4 classes of Tantra. In particular, we'll be just looking at the first lowest class of Tantra, action or Kriya Tantra, as a short introduction to it. Okay, so in the meantime, here we go. We'll start with reciting the Heart Sutra. I should have been doing this over the last number of courses. That was always my thing to start with the Heart Sutra. I got a little distracted, I think, and forgot. So I want to get back into always starting with the Heart Sutra to remind ourselves our whole purpose as Buddhists is to realize emptiness directly. And we want the blessings of the Buddhas that we be able to do this and realize this great, noble, divine goal. Homage to Perfection Wisdom, the Blessed Mother. Thus I have heard at one time the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajgir in Mass Vulture's Mountain, together the great assembly of monks and nuns and a great assembly of bodhisattvas. That time, the Blessed One was absorbed in the concentration of countless aspects of phenomena called profound illumination. That time also Spirit of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the great being, was looking perfectly at the practice of profound perfection of wisdom, looking perfectly also at the 5 aggregates being empty of inherent existence. Then through the power of Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to Spirit of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the great being, how should a son of the lineage train who wishes to engage the practice of profound perfection of wisdom? Thus he spoke, and Spirit of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the great being, replied to Venerable Shariputra as follows. Shariputra, whatever son or daughter of the lineage wishes to engage the practice of profound perfection of wisdom should look perfectly like this. Subsequently, looking perfectly and correctly also the 5 aggregates being empty of inherent existence. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. Likewise, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena of emptiness having no characteristics, not produce and do not cease. They have no defilement, no separation from defilement, no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, and no consciousness. There is no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mentality, no form, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, object, no phenomenon. There is no I element, so forth, up to no mentality element, also up to no element of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance, no exhaustion of interest, and so forth, up to no aging and death, no exhaustion of aging and death. Likewise, no suffering. Origin, cessation, or path, no exalted awareness, no attainment, also no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and abide in perfection wisdom. Their minds have no obstructions and no fear. Fasting, utterly beyond perversity, attain the final nirvana. Also, all Buddhas reside perfectly 3 times, having relied upon the perfection of wisdom, became manifest complete Buddhas in state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the equal and unequal mantra, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, since it's not false, should be known as the truth. Mantra of perfection of wisdom is proclaimed, Tayatam Gata Gata Paragata Parasamgata Buddhi Soha. Shariputra Bodhisattva, great beings, should train the profound perfection of wisdom like this. Then the Blessed One arose that concentration and said, Spirit of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the great being, who had spoken well. Good, O son of the lineage, just like them. Since it's like that, just as you have revealed in that way, the profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced, and Tathagatas also rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Shariputra Spirit Bhagavata, the Bodhisattva, the great being, the entire circle of disciples, as well as worldly beings, gods, and demigods, and spirits were delighted and highly praised what had been spoken by the Blessed One. Okay, so let's just take a moment just to do some opening prayers and a little brief meditation before we start. So we can feel that we're seated in a wide open space, grounds like lapis lazuli, smooth, warm to the touch, soft, easy to sit on. And we're surrounded by all sentient beings of the 6 classes of samsara, 6 kind of realms in samsara. We can visualize the people closest to us, around us. So Mother on our left, Father on our right. People we love the most behind us is our support. And people we like the least or have issues with in front of us as objects of our prayers, healing and love, bodhicitta, compassion. And moving from there, humans from all over the world without exception, from all different places and backgrounds, all different sort of natural living beings from the animal realm, from tiny insects up to big mammals, birds and fishes and so forth, our whole natural environment. The whole spirit world is here, just as varied and as numerous as the natural world. Just we can think of all the different realms, astral, ethereal, elemental, so forth, all those different kinds of beings here with us. Celestial beings, different god beings and demigod beings, gods and goddesses, or any sort of divine sort of, but nevertheless within samsara beings. And finally, beings in lower states of existence in the hell realms and hungry ghost realms. So now just looking up from our vantage point, looking in front of us and above us, let's just have the center figure, sort of the refuge field for us today. For Tantra, we can just feel that as our root guru, our teacher, all of our teachers, all holy beings, all light beings in one form, which is Conqueror Vajradhara, Buddha Shakyamuni's sort of angelic form of Sambhogakaya form. So we can visualize him, if you like, on a white line throne, multicolored lotus and sunseat. Otherwise, he can just be sort of floating in the air. The beautiful sapphire blue light or energy, sort of translucent, you can see through him. And he has one face and 2 hands in lotus position, arms across his heart, left holding a bell, tantric bell, right holding a dorje or vaja, sort of a diamond scepter, or thunderbolt scepter. And he's wearing a crown, beautiful silks and jewels and so forth, and is absolutely beautiful and blissful. And at his heart, you can visualize a little sun disk, a home letter, H-U-M in English, or the Sanskrit or Tibetan letter, made out of blue light or energy, softly radiating out rainbow lights, white, blue, green, red, and yellow, like a big ball in all directions. So keep taking refuge from our hearts. I and all sentient beings into achieve enlightenment, go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. I and all sentient beings to achieve enlightenment, go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. I and all sentient beings to achieve enlightenment, go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Through the virtues we collect by giving other perfections, may we become a Buddha for the benefit of all. Through the virtues we collect by giving other perfections, may we become a Buddha for the benefit of all. Through the virtues we collect by giving and other perfections, may we become a Buddha for the benefit of all. So again, taking refuge in the 3 jewels, in particular is Buddha as the example, or the great doctor, the Sangha as our sort of companionship and community support, people along the path, or the way in particular Arya Sangha, beings that have realized emptiness. They're kind of like the EMTs and nurses helping the doctor. And finally, the medicine itself, or the teachings, the real Dharma jewel, sort of our real focus of our refuge, which is the Dharma jewel itself. In particular, all the teachings on emptiness are real refuge. And setting our intention, everything we're doing here today and every day is put towards the enlightenment and liberation of all sentient beings. May we become Buddha, and all sentient beings become Buddha. Now, opening our heart with the four immeasurables, generating love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. May everyone be happy. May everyone be free from misery. May no one ever be separated from their happiness. And may everyone have equanimity, free from hatred and attachment. So again, love, wanting all beings to be happy. Compassion, not wanting them to suffer. Wanting all beings to have the joy of full enlightenment. Positive, affirmative power. So loving, connecting with all beings. And equanimity. Warm, open, friendly, caring attitude towards all beings, sort of beyond these extremes of hope and fear or attachment and hatred or aversion. Now, again, in the space before me, we can say is living, conquer Vajradhara. So if we like, we can have surrounded by all sentient, all sort of holy beings, I should say, surrounded by all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, like the full moon surrounded by stars. If you can do that visualization, otherwise just keep it just solitary figure of conquer Vajradhara. 7 limbs, with my body, speech, and mind, humbly I prostrate, and make offerings both set out and imagine. I confess my wrong deeds from all time, and rejoice in the virtues of all. Please stay until samsara ceases, and turn the wheel of dharma for us. I dedicate all virtues to great enlightenment. Now, holding up a purified universe as the mandala in our hands here, all beautiful things that we're offering up to conquer Vajradhara and all holy beings, sort of embodied by him, working in and through him. The ground sprinkled with perfume and spread with flowers, a great mountain, 4 lands, sun and moon, seen as a Buddha land and offered thus. May all beings enjoy such pure lands. We send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious gurus. And now the short Lamrim prayer by Tsongkhapa, just as a basis for our tantric practice. All of our sutric practices in particular sort of being embodied in 3 principal paths of renunciation, bodhicitta, the awakening mind, and wisdom realizing emptiness. Path begins with strong reliance on Maika and teacher, source of all good. Let's make this understanding to follow him or her with great devotion. This human life with all of its freedoms, extremely rare with so much meaning. Blessed with this understanding all day and night to seize its essence. My body, like a water bubble, decays and dies so very quickly. After death come results of karma, just like the shadow of a body. This firm knowledge and remembrance bless me to be extremely cautious, always avoiding harmful actions and gaining abundant virtue. Samsara's pleasures are deceptive, with no contentment, only torment. So please bless me to strive sincerely to gain the bliss of perfect freedom. Oh, bless me so that from this pure thought comes mindfulness and greatest caution, to keep as my essential practice the doctrine's root, the Pratimoksha. Just like myself, all my kind mothers are drowning in samsara's ocean. Also, then I soon release them, bless me to train in bodhicitta. But I cannot become a Buddha without 3 ethics, so bless me with the strength to practice the bodhisattva's ordination. By pacifying my distractions and analyzing perfect meanings, bless me to gain the union of special insight and quiescence. When I become a pure container through common paths, bless me to enter the essence practice of good fortune, the supreme vehicle of Vajrayana. The 2 attainments both depend on my sacred vows and my commitments. Bless me to understand this clearly and keep them at the cost of my life. By constant practice in 4 sessions, the way explained by holy teachers, bless me to gain both the stages which are the essence of the Tantras. May those who guide me on the good path and all my companions all of long lives, bless me to pacify completely all obstacles, outer and inner. May I always find perfect teachers and take delight in holy dharma, accomplish all grounds and pass swiftly, and gain the state of Vajradhara. So from the heart, the holy being here, streams of light and nectar flow down, granting blessings and purifying. So we can feel at this point now beautiful five-colored light, elemental light is coming down into our hearts. So it's like a big rainbow being emitted by Vajradhara, beautiful, sort of the five transcendent wisdoms or elemental energies, blue, white, green, red, and yellow, dissolving into us. Five wisdoms are five purified aggregates or Dhyani Buddhas here, sort of that energy is going into us, blessing us, purifying us, but also just giving us the potential to unveil or disclose the same divine reality. So we can just feel Dharmadhatu wisdom, mirror-like wisdom, discriminating wisdom, quality wisdom, and all-accomplishing wisdom, all being sort of dissolved into our hearts. And now dissolve and conquer Vajradhara, we can say, please grant us your blessings of body, speech, and mind. And he starts to shrink and get really small, about the size of a piece of corn or a little sunflower seed in the sky. Still emitting those beautiful sort of five-colored lights. Now sort of he comes down to the crown of our head. Turns around so faces the same direction as us. And because he's made out of light or energy, he can sort of dissolve into our crown chakra. And then slowly descend to our heart, just right in front of our spine, just like a leaf falling. And once he gets to our heart, just like dropping a little drop of blue food dye into a glass of water. Just he dissolves into his mind and our mind dissolve together here, become one. And again, rather than coloring everything blue, just feel like we just dissolve and become one, like one glass of water poured into another. All the wisdom, the power, and compassion of all the Buddhas goes directly into us. That we have those same qualities, right? Those same qualities within us become invoked and revealed. So let's just sit for a moment with this energy here. Sense of spaciousness, illumination or knowing, and bliss and joy. Again, bliss being a sense of totality here and oneness, completion, peace, and joy being sort of positive energy. space as much as we can through our class here. Just feel the blessings of all the Buddhas, sort of illuminating our nature here, true nature. Okay, so continuing on with our book, which is Lama Yeshe's book here, Introduction to Tantra, Vision of Totality. So I'm going to switch glasses, put my reading glasses on here. And we are looking now at section called Overthrowing the Tyranny of Ordinary Appearances, which is going beyond limitations or seeing oneself as a deity, a tantric deity or Buddhist deity, or a Buddha, we could say. So, as we've mentioned before, the energy of desire can affect us in two completely opposite ways. Okay? So, through tantric transformation, this energy can be transmuted into light and blissful wisdom and become a potent force in self-development. That's one way, which is the way we want. That's the tantric path. Or ordinarily, the normal way, the sort of second way that we usually deal with this energy. So ordinarily, this desirous energy feeds into habitual patterns of grasping and attachment. This only decreases our awareness while reinforcing our ignorance and dissatisfaction. Our spiritual task is to identify the factors responsible for perpetuating the cycle of dissatisfaction and apply the antidote to it. Only then can we best use Tantra's transformative powers. Buddhist Tantra claims that we remain trapped within a circle of dissatisfaction because our view of reality is narrow and suffocating. We hold on to a very limited view of who we are and what we can become. The result being our self-image remains impressively low and negative, and we feel inadequate and hopeless. As long as our opinion of ourselves is miserable, our life will be meaningless, absurd, and miserable as well. So I'd like to just give a little bit of comment on this, a little bit of a commentary, which is interesting, where Lama Yeshe says is that normally our desirous energies feed into habitual patterns of grasping and attachment, where we were talking sort of our cycle of sort of our addictive ways of dealing with pleasure and happiness in our lives. And I like how he says, if we follow that normal habitual path, it only decreases our awareness while reinforcing our ignorance and dissatisfaction. So it's interesting, we've talked in the previous classes about how that sort of addictive, normal sort of worldly cycle of dissatisfaction reproduces itself almost like a drive, and you just corkscrew constantly within sort of dissatisfaction, addiction, and so forth. And so we've talked about that before, but I like the point there he says that this decreases our awareness. And so I'd like to say that we can see this when we're in that cycle of addiction, sort of dissatisfaction. Our awareness itself is like a tunnel vision, so to speak. We can see this in our own lives. You can read all the sort of studies and, sort of, I guess, more psychological explanations and treatments of addiction. So this sort of addictive, dissatisfied, sort of existential angst-ridden view of desire. What you get is sort of an attachment, an addiction, sort of like a propulsion, a drive, where it is kind of like tunnel vision. You're just looking at a specific sense object or an object of pleasure that you want to remove, that you're hoping will give you lasting happiness, but remove all this kind of anxiety and angst, and that you don't notice anything else but that. We can see this even with, other beings. Like if you look at how even we might have a dog where you have a dog treat, we can all sort of laugh at how the dog's just so fixated. I've just seen before friends, beagles, let's say, or labs, which are just so food obsessed, how they're just so funny and just so addicted to, let's say, getting a dog treat or a piece of meat or something like that. We can all have a good laugh and they won't notice anything else. They're just kind of like all getting sucked through this tube, so to speak, of awareness. But we're the same way. And this is where, on an ethical level, we can say that we don't even notice other people's people. This would be the classic thing that you get in Hegel's treatment of master slave dialectic in chapter 4 on desire in his Phenomenology of Geist, where he talks about this as kind of what Kant would say is the unethical thing, is that when we treat people as means, not as ends. In other words, that we see people as a prop or a means to get what we want, rather, for our own self projects, rather than treating them as another subjectivity in the world, as having their own ends, their own dreams. They're people just like us that don't deserve to be treated just as objects for our own pleasures and satisfactions, right? So we can see this, that's the problem, is when we get that kind of tunnel vision towards objects, towards other people, other creatures in the world, we're using them. They're necessarily in a situation where we're seeing them again as an object for ourselves to use, or a prop, or some kind of feature of our world, rather than them having a world in and of themselves, right? So our whole awareness, and this is another seeing it as being sort of a function of ignorance. Our whole awareness is limited, right? But I also like where Lama Yeshe says is that we hold on to a very limited view of who we are and what we can become. Self-being, our self-image remains oppressively low and negative, and we feel inadequate and hopeless. So point of life is to experience as much pleasure as possible before death. This is this kind of in this limited way, and such a depressing outlook may amount for much of our modern alienation, he says. Right? So we can see sort of in what Nietzsche would call the age of nihilism that we live in, this kind of secular competitive materialism, is not just sort of an economy of an addiction and this constant seeking of pleasure and happiness. At the same time, it just constantly puts us in this cycle of shopping, so to speak, for more sort of sort of addictive experiences, or this or that. It ends up in the long run sort of creating a world for ourselves and for other people where it's sort of a meaningless world. It's just sort of an animal existence of just chasing after pleasures and experiences sort of to get high or to sort of escape suffering. So you've seen this where they've done even these experiments where they, wire up a rat in sort of an electrode into its brain, gives it a shock in the pleasure center, so to speak, where it feels sort of pleasure. And all it has to do is press a button to do this. You see that the rat will even kind of like starve itself. It won't do anything but just sit there and press the button to get this kind of bliss experience. And so what's sad about that is, of course, you could see in our modern world that that's all we do. We just run around chasing these experiences, and that there's no higher purpose for ourselves or a society than that. Just shopping, blissing out, addictively chasing after pleasures. And it ends up having a very, very sort of limited view of basically, sort of the secular materialist view is that that's all we are. Just have fun, party until you die, because there's nothing after that. Use everything in the world, don't leave anything for anyone else, like this. And, just for a very sort of, they call it low interpretation. So I like to think that in some ways, you could see this in one of my favorite philosophers, Spinoza, said that it's kind of like there's two energies or views, like sort of like sad thoughts or joyful thoughts, so to speak, like two behaviors. So when we're moving towards joyful thoughts, sort of moving towards the divine, so to speak, our sense of self expands and opens up, sort of connects with other people. We get more powerful, we get more creative, we get more affirmative, and we end up, what he says, going to a state of beatitude, like sort of more this sort of blissful, holy state of becoming one with the universe or one with God or the divine itself. Whereas the other option is constricting inwards on yourself and your selfishness, where the sad thoughts are sort of resentful, negative thoughts. And what he says is that your conatus, like in Latin, sort of your personal power or desire starts to implode, almost like a black hole in and of itself, where you start detaching yourselves from other people in the world and just sort of burying in on yourself. And what happens is you start to lose your power. You lose your capacity to even express your desires or agency in the world. And your mind becomes more and more negative. And eventually it's almost like you suffocate yourself and die. And I think there's some truth to that, obviously, which is why I've always liked Spinoza. And Nietzsche always said that, Spinoza was his precursor, in the sense that how do we um, end up having this ethics of the event in Nietzsche, where we have amor fati, or love of fate, where we just love the world, love all beings, and open up to all things and become sort of the force of creation itself, while following this kind of Spinozist attitude of becoming more active and affirmative rather than reactive and negative, living like what Nietzsche would call a ressentiment, of having this vengeful mind, this angry, selfish mind, reactive mind towards the world and everyone else. That rather than making us a powerful person in terms of will to power, this ends up increasing our power and ends up having us as rejecting life, rejecting happiness, rejecting everything and being negative. So Tantra, I feel, is sort of like a positive power, like these joyful thoughts. So Lama Yeshe says, Tantra challenges our low opinion of human potential and ourselves by showing us how to view ourselves and others as transcendently beautiful, as tantric deities, sort of Buddhist gods and goddesses. So we dissolve our ordinary conceptions of ourselves, and from empty space arise in glorious light body or energy body of a deity, the manifestation of our essential clarity of our deepest being. The more we train to see ourselves as such a meditational deity, the less bound we feel by life's disappointments and frustrations. This divine self-visualization empowers us to take control of our life and create for ourselves a pure environment in which our deepest nature can be expressed. So that's, like I was saying, just in a Spinozist way, that these sort of, you can look at the whole tantric transformations being like a path of joyful thoughts or joyful living, right? And it's an antidote to this sort of these sad thoughts or sort of reactive way of living. So he says that allows us to, powers us to take control of our life and create for ourselves a pure environment which our deepest nature can be expressed. So of course, like we've shown on the courses on sutra, on karma and emptiness, different classes I've taught on that, by self-generating as a deity, or seeing ourselves as divine, everyone else is divine, everything is blissful light, beautiful light, beauty, joy. This is easier for us to create positive karma or merit. It's easier for us if we see everything is beautiful, everything is joyful, for ourselves to be beautiful and joyful and have an open heart and create positive karma, rather than the opposite, we're having a view of ourselves being the whole world being negative, reactive. And so consequently, having that view of things, having that view of ourselves, being sort of this small, angry self, in war with the world and other people, that ends up, that kind of ignorance or self-cherishing mind, self-grasping mind, ends up perpetuating negative karma and negative energy, because we behave in accordance with that. We end up manifesting those negative actions based on a negative, low interpretation of ourselves and other people. So the deity here represents qualities of a fully awakened experience latent within us, the archetype of our deepest nature, the most profound level of consciousness. In Tantra, we focus our attention on such an archetypal image and identify it in order to arouse our deepest, most profound aspects of our being and bring them into our present reality. The simple truth is we identify ourselves as being fundamentally pure, strong, capable. We get these qualities. But if we continue to think of ourselves as dull, foolish, or I guess negative, this is what we become. So again, if everything is empty, as we've seen, and everything is just a manifestation, the virtuality of our mind and our actions of body, speech, and mind, what we think and what we do ends up becoming what we become. And the world we deploy on the basis of that mind. So the world and self in that world, or the self and world, so to speak, go together. They're products of our mind. So we can see is that if we end up self-generating as a deity or have pure view, we end up living in a pure world. If we have an impure view or a negative, reactive view of ourselves, that's the world we end up living in. Right? So just the quote here, on page 43, he says, This is beautiful. It says, to give an example of tantric transformation, we might visualize ourselves as Manjushri, a princely deity usually represented as a reddish yellow in color, holding the sword of discriminating awareness in his right hand and a text of Buddha's perfection of wisdom teachings in his left. This we can do whether we are a man or woman, since tantric visualizations completely transcend our ordinary identifications, male or female. But such a visualized image is not, in fact, actual Manjushri. Excuse me, wisdom itself, the completely unobscured insight of a mind that has realized its full potential, is the actual Manjushri. And the purpose of seeing ourselves in the form of this particular deity is to hasten the development of wisdom already within us. Manjushri's double-edged sword, for example, symbolizes the ability of enlightened wisdom to discriminate between what's true and what's false by cutting through misconceptions and superstitions. The more closely we identify with such a deity, having become familiar with what each of his attributes stands for, the more deeply we stimulate in our own mind the growth of the qualities he represents. And then he finishes here, in the early stages of practice, the process of seeing oneself as a deity is largely artificial. But as we train in deity yoga with proper perseverance, we'll be able to perceive the self-generated deity with a clarity far exceeding that of our present self-image. Our mind will actually become the mind of a deity, and our ordinary sensory experiences, what we see, hear, taste, and so forth, will become transformed the blissful enjoyments of the deity. This is not a fairy tale. Such transformation has been the experience of countless tantric meditators of the past, and there's no reason why, if we exert sufficient effort, we should not experience the same transcendental results. Okay, so we've talked about this before, even in our sutra classes, that just basically, if there's no ground or foundation reality, reality is a projection of our mind, our body, speech, and mind, so to speak, that ends up creating the world we live in as well as the self that we project. Then, as we can see, if we do tantric self-generation, how this can end up creating the world of our imagination becomes a real world, right? Because things are just a product of how we label them in terms of language and the logic of grammar of our language, the grammar even of our thoughts, that ends up being the world we live in there. So that's a beautiful sort of tantric transformation, you can say. Okay, I just wanted to say also that I don't know if it's in this book, Lama Yeshe, or it might be in his Vajrasattva book, I can't remember, but he ends up saying, it's kind of interesting, what's the difference between generating ourselves as a tantric deity or a Buddhist angel and generating ourselves, let's say, as a watch or as a phone, right? Or even, let's say, generating ourselves as somebody else, like, let's say, someone famous, like whatever we wanted. Generate ourselves as Donald Trump or Taylor Swift or something like that. What's the difference? Technically, should you be able to do that? Well, yeah, I mean, I guess if that's what you wanted to do you want to visualize yourself as being your new car or visualize yourself as a dog or anything else? What would that be? Well, in other words, what's the difference? Like, if I'm trying to be Mashi Ladron right up here, what's the difference between that and just visualizing myself as Taylor Swift? Well, the difference would be is one leads to enlightenment and one leads just to more samsara. We could just sort of say that if we're even trying to be someone other than we am, we might make ourselves quote unquote mentally ill. Like, even if I do manage to pull off and visualize myself as some other person in the world, some celebrity or famous person or powerful person, and end up pulling it off, what will that do? Well, it'll just create more dissatisfaction, and I might be able to sort of make it a marginal improvement in my life, but not by much. I mean, despite the fact that there's personality disorders or anything that can come with that. But let's say even if you're able to pull it off and almost become like a clone of a big celebrity or powerful person in the world, well, that might solve some more temporary problems. But in the long run, it's just more samsara, it's more dissatisfaction, it's more confusion, it's more ignorance, it's more suffering. So why is it if I manifest as a deity, why would that be an improvement? Well, because these deities are pure energy beyond sort of samsara, life and death, so to speak. They're an inorganic life. They have sort of a mind and body like an angel, not within samsara, but also the body that they generate, whether it's Brahmanagma or a Kala Chakra or something like this, is a symbolic body. So it's kind of interesting, but this is, I think in previous classes I've talked about what a Buddha is, but on an angelic level or Sambhogakaya level, a Buddha's body not only is just pure light or energy in pure love, pure goodness, bodhicitta, absolute love, absolute wisdom, absolute compassion, but their body itself, Kenneth Rexroth said this, like, these beings are quote unquote conceptual beings in the sense that how a Buddha is manifesting in terms of their body isn't just manifesting as a, whatever famous worldly person or something like that, but when I visualize myself as having one of these deity bodies, the deity body itself is a conceptual body. It's like an archetype. Its entire being, so to speak, is a manifestation of the wisdom of the Dharma and the love of the Dharma. So everything a Buddha is doing or acting as or symbolically manifesting is as a teaching, and in particular teaching of method and wisdom, of compassion, skill and love, and wisdom realizing emptiness. So the colors Buddhas appear as, whether they have different bunch of different arms or different limbs or different faces, what are they holding, what are they doing? All of these things are symbolic or archetypal as a way of teaching Dharma to sentient beings that they realize that same enlightened state. And when they become enlightened on a Sambhogakaya or angelic form, their bodies will become symbolic archetypes of the Dharma as sort of like a teaching form to help all sentient beings realize that state beyond birth and death, beyond suffering. So I think that that's important, whereas let's say if you just self-generate as a candle or as a cup of coffee, let's say, what's that, unless you said, oh, I'm appearing as the Buddha who's the cup of coffee, and the coffee is the nectar of bliss that makes you awake when you drink it, realizing emptiness. Maybe if you put it that way, you might be able to pull it off. But on the whole, these are sort of archetypal beings or archetypal forms, so to speak. I think it's important to say that. Okay, so Lama Yeshe says this, we must remember is that when we emanate ourselves as a deity, it's not to manifest as something different from what we already are. We already have a divine manifestation within us at the moment. The reason we practice emanating ourselves as a deity is so that we can fully recognize and cultivate these qualities rather than remaining trapped and miserable in our own self-limiting projections. Question, how could a deity be the essence of what I already am? I don't look anything like these deity persons. But what are we really? The emptiness of body and mind of persons. You're changing all the time, whereas the self, all this stems from the mind. We always associate with the physical body, and but we possess a subtle soul body, a subtle conscious body connected to deep level of consciousness, and from these subtler levels, a potential energy of blissful wisdom arises. So basically, what he's saying here is, remember, just by our practice of looking at the emptiness of self in the body, the fact that we are just a projection, we are always changing, we are how we exist even on a conventional worldly level, is just through the product of our mind, sense of how we label, how we conceptualize ourselves, how we talk and think about ourselves. And so that could be different rather than just being limited by seeing ourselves in a worldly way. We can see ourselves in a divine way. But also, as Lama Yeshe says, is that, being a tantric deity is the projection of sort of a deeper divine nature that we have. In the sense that, number one, we have a natural and developing Buddha nature, or what Tathagata Garbha. Our mind is empty. It can be anything. It has a complete divine potential. But at the same time, we have developing, that's the natural Buddha nature that we have, that we can be anything because our mind is empty and all things are empty. And also we have all these positive qualities that we're developing, because of our own inner wisdom and interconnection with all things, seeking to be happy. We are on a spiritual path, sort of projecting positive karma, purifying and creating merit that will allow us to deploy this divine nature that we have, right? We also have this most subtle mind and subtle energy that's at the basis of our reality. Even on a conventional level, this mind is projecting out a diluted view of ourselves, but once this is cleaned up, it can project out a positive view. So technically, this divine potential we have within ourselves, this mind that goes life to life to life, this energy that goes life to life to life, this is a positive, pure potential that's always there, that can be developed, and is our ticket, so to speak, our bridge out of samsara into the purity of enlightenment. So by practicing tantric techniques or self-generation, this is what allows us to do this or complete the path. Tantric deities symbolize the full development of this blissful wisdom energy and represent the essence of who we are and what we become. Okay? So, so deity yoga here is rather the practical method for living up to our highest potential through training, transformation, and consciousness, through the power of visualization or imagination, or the power of a positive self-image. Okay? So this isn't just like, what Lama Yeshe says, fantasizing the impossible. This isn't us just going deeper into the realms of fantasy and addiction by sort of believing in stuff that's not true, maybe to make ourselves feel better about ourselves. Because we've studied the three principal paths of renunciation, bodhicitta, or the awakening mind, and wisdom realizing emptiness, we know that this is possible. We know that reality is created in and through the imagination or mind anyway, and we know that following the laws of karma, that to find true lasting happiness, we have to create positive karma, in the sense that we have to live a life of three higher trainings of moral discipline, concentration, wisdom realizing emptiness, and with the Mahayana path of having a proper intention of love and compassion. We know that if we follow this, if we follow the path of the imagination, but with that view and with that intention, we can sort of really deploy or express a divine universe for ourselves and for other beings here. Biggest obstacle, he says, to the transformation of deity is our persistent belief in ordinary appearances. As long as we hang on to ordinary vision of ourselves, there's no space for seeing ourselves in enlightened being. We can't see ourselves as a being of light if we self-identify with our gross physical body. We'll never be able to contact the essential pure nature of our being if we continue to think of our mind's fundamental nature as just deluded and gross conceptions. It's just deluded gross conceptions that pass through it. We must break through the tyranny of ordinary appearances and conceptions and see how disastrous they are. They make us confused, insecure, and dissatisfied. The tendency we have towards indecision, fear is a symptom of our dualistic mind that churns out endless judgments and make us miserable. So in a lot of ways, I like this, that basically what's the obstacle to this path? It's basically not believing in the emptiness of appearances, and we've sort of seen the importance of studying emptiness as being sort of the heart of this path. And insofar as we don't meditate on emptiness, our tantric path won't work. And so if we think things are real, they're exactly the way they should be. They can't be any other way that they are. I can't be any other way that I am. Everything's sort of static, unchanging. It is the way it is. We'll never be able to transform things in a tantric way. We'll never be able to escape our suffering and samsara. And I like this, he says, as long as we sort of associate with sort of our coarse, sort of gross conceptions. In other words, if we take everything in our mind to be absolutely unchanging and real, and not doubt it, and not see it's just a projection, that it's virtual, it can change, it's just a conventionality, we will never be able to not just embark on the tantric path, but sort of get anywhere with it. So the next little section is called A Mind Distracted Outwards. Mind is always searching for something, passing from one thing to another, looking for satisfaction, stability, and security, always hoping to find what we're looking for. The result is that we're constantly distracted. It's hard to concentrate because we're always dissatisfied. So again, just like I've said before, sort of in this addictive mode of always looking, as Jacques Lacan would say, it's sort of like, in the sort of Neo-Freudian view, object little a or object X, it's always looking for this something in our life that we think is missing, something that should be there, something that's been taken from us, something sort of the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, so to speak. That distracts us. Of course, we've said before that just leads to a constant cycle of dissatisfaction, but also it distracts our mind. We can't focus on anything for too long because we're always in the cycle of addiction and dissatisfaction. So our mind is distracted outwards rather than starting to look at are all these issues coming from in the first place. What's good or what's bad, what's satisfying or dissatisfying, all that originates in the mind. But again, I can't see this if I'm distracted and constantly in a cycle of dissatisfaction. So the inevitable result of our limited self-conception is limited by our unquestioning belief in ordinary appearances. This is the tendency to look outside ourselves for the answer to our problems, as I said. Grown accustomed to seeing ourselves as incomplete, lacking in a fundamental way, it never crosses our mind to look towards our own inner strength and resources. But again, something in our again, we seek something in our outer environment or some possession that will give us what we want, true lasting happiness and satisfaction we're looking for. Even though we know that this isn't true, we will never be given a sort of peace of mind or peace in heart by following this way. Rather, as he says, it produces self-pity, dissatisfaction, and so forth. Tantric self-generation is a direct opponent to the self-pitying attitude. If our mental image is positive, our actions will naturally be filled with self-confidence, and the impression we make is a strength and vitality. The mental attitude responsible for whatever, it's our mental attitude which is responsible for whether we're successful or unsuccessful, healthy or ill, attractive or ugly, happy or depressed. Although we have a fundamentally pure nature, it's not easy to get in touch with it. Our gross mind functioning drowns out the deeper, subtle vibration of this mind, so we're unaware of it. So if we want to connect with this subtle essence, we need to quiet a distracted mind, loosen our hold on ordinary appearances and conceptions, and we need to create the space in which our pure nature can function uninterruptedly. Then, when we employ our self-generation, we won't be pretending, we'll be bringing to the surface the inner divine qualities we always had. Methods for creating necessary space are contain the prerequisites of Tantra, the three principal paths. So in a lot of ways with Tantra, what we're trying to do, again, which is ironic, is I shouldn't say it's ironic, but like, again, we're focused outwards, looking, we have this sense of dissatisfaction or lack, or sort of this addictive hole that has to be filled. So we're always looking outward, but in a lot of words, we have to turn around and look inward. It's almost like the Gnostic Christian example, finding the inner Christ. We have to reject the outer world of the demiurge, our sort of ego, sort of the echoes of our desires and all these things, and turn inward, sort of not trust appearances, but more than that, just see where appearances come from. Where does experience come from? It comes from the mind, right? And we have to see that the world isn't coming at us, but coming from us. We have to sort of bend backwards and look at the mind as being a source of reality through our projections, through our karma, but also see that because of that, this is sort of the inner source of our freedom, the inner source of the sort of lasting happiness we're truly looking for. So this is what allows us to sort of go inward and go a little bit more deeper, right? Like Lama Yeshe says, we want to connect with this subtle essence, quiet all distractions, loosen our hold on ordinary appearances and conceptions. We need to create space, a space in which pure nature can function uninterruptedly. So, in a lot of words, in other words, I should say, it's almost like what we're doing when we're doing Mahamudra meditation, of meditating, taking the mind as the object of meditation itself. The sutric part of Mahamudra is that we're going to see through, by just watching our mind and not getting attached to its contents, all the different things that come and go in the mind. But if we're still and we meditate, and again, just not get attached, not chase after the sort of thoughts that arise in and of themselves, eventually what ends up happening is start to see the mind itself, that the mind is just clear cognizing. The mind has no form, but it's just a sheer openness to the world, that is just knowing things, or cognizing or illuminating things, allowing things to be what they are, just allowing them to be experienced. So we end up seeing the mind as that way, clear and cognizing, or just sort of a sense of luminous spaciousness. We want to do the same thing with Tantra. This is sort of the basis that we're going to use. And again, once we're sort of in that space, this allows us to have sort of the blank screen that we can start to transform our appearances. From this sort of standpoint of Mahamudra, so to speak, we can start to see that the divine potential we have, that everything is empty, so everything's changeable, flexible, plastic, but also our mind is empty. Like even on a conventional level, it's just a sheer openness, and it's just clear cognition. So this is the basis we have, sort of our fundamental potential, you could say, to start remaking the world, to making the world pure, having sort of pure imagination, pure view, and this itself as by doing this, this allows us to sort of get out of this addictive model of desire, getting more a model of bliss, more model of joy, sort of more behaving that way, because it ends up being an antidote to this idea that I'm focusing on the outside, which is separate from me, which is promising something that I'm lacking or don't have. From this standpoint, rather, this more Mahamudra standpoint, I just start to see that even to start with, I'm pure and I'm complete. I'm a fullness. Everything's just a sheer openness. And what is in this sheer openness? The world. The world and I aren't separate, right? What's in this? What's sort of in this illuminated space that I can know anything or be anything? The tantric transformation that I'm trying to do, I see that right off the bat, I have the resources and the power to do this. It's almost by nature I can do this. It's my birthright, my Buddha nature. It's something that's always already here. So in a lot of ways, the solution to my suffering and my grasping and my addiction mind, this isn't outside of myself. I have it already within myself. All I have to do is create the space for it. And this knot starts to undo itself in and of itself or by itself, through its own power, so to speak, which is, I think, pretty amazing. So Alex says, what are the method for creating necessary space? Contain the prerequisites to Tantra. Well, again, we've talked about this before in previous classes. It's the three principal paths, again, of renunciation, bodhicitta, and wisdom realizing emptiness. So the next little 3 sessions we'll look at these again, sort of a little bit of a refresher. Look at how these 3 things of renunciation, bodhicitta, or great compassion for all sentient beings, becoming enlightened, becoming Buddha, in order, through my great compassion, I'm able to lead all sentient beings to that same state, and wisdom realizing emptiness that allows all of this to happen in the first place, so to speak, the unity of karma and emptiness. This will be the nuclear reactor at the center of our tantric practice. Okay. All right, so there we go. That's enough for today, enough for this class. So we'll just take a moment to dedicate all of this. My blessings of all holy beings, all of our gurus and all Buddhas, the truth of karma, the power of pure spirit intention, and all of our dharma wishes be fulfilled. Okay, I dedicate this for the enlightenment of all sentient beings. Okay, see you next time.